Hi, and welcome back to Sociology. We're going to be looking at social stratification in Canada, and we'll do this in two parts. According to the Maclean's magazine in 2013, there are at least 90 reasons why it's better to live in Canada than anywhere else in the world. Some of the reasons include these. Canadians live a long time, enjoy a high quality of life, have a high life satisfaction, are highly educated, and fairly well off financially. Now, as highly developed nations with an advanced economy, universal access to healthcare, and publicly funded education, Canada does boast one of the best standards of living in the world. But this does not mean that everyone in Canada is well off. Something that readers in the Maclean's article might be led to assume, though, is that all nations, including Canada, are characterized by social inequality. That just means that there are citizens ranging from very poor to extremely wealthy, with corresponding levels of quality of life. Like culture and social structure, social inequality plays an important role in shaping who we are, what we experience, and who we become. If our parents are wealthy, our life chances are considerably better than if we were born in a poor family environment. If our parents are poor, you may face challenges securing basic necessities such as suitable winter clothing and regular nutritional diet, and you may have to forego luxuries like vacations and some consumer goods that your neighbors might have. Social inequality refers to the unequal distribution of resources such as wealth, prestige, and power. That inequality affects personal outcomes such as education, occupational attainment, also health. The financial consequences of the COVID pandemic circumstances prompted many Canadians to think and talk more about social stratification. Social inequality is intertwined with social stratification, which refers to the socially sanctioned patterns of social inequality that persists in a society that are based on distinguishable attributes such as race, age, gender, income, and occupation. Social stratification systems hierarchically rank entire categories of people that hold higher or lower positions than others. In part one, we're going to explore and introduce the topic of stratification, inequality in Canada, and a classical perspective on social class. Okay, so let's start with social stratification as a definition. This is the hierarchical arrangement of large social groups based on their control over basic resources. In Canadian society, we are socialized to believe that hard work is the key to personal success, and by extension, that those who fail to do so as a result of their own inadequacies. Well, in reality, the situation is much more complex. Every Canadian's opportunity to achieve greater wealth or success, by and large, depends on where you are located on the social strata. Social stratification refers to the social division of groups by wealth, earnings, education, prestige, and other measures of power. Now, Max Weber, he coined the term life chances. Now, life chances refers to the extent to which individuals have access to important societal resources such as food, clothing, shelter, education, and healthcare. The more affluent have better life chances. Life chances are not only a Canadian issue, they are an international issue. In every country, life chances can positively affect individual, family, and community outcomes. Now, we do have in sociology what we call systems of stratification. Now, sociology distinguishes between open and closed systems. Open systems are flexible boundaries of hierarchy that can be affected by one's own achieved status. Social mobility is possible. You can move up, you can move down, you can move laterally. A closed system, the boundaries are much more rigid. One's position are set by ascribed status. Remember, ascribed status is what you're born with. Now, I mentioned the term social mobility, moving up, moving down, moving across. And this is the movement of individuals or groups from one level of stratification system to another. It's more likely to occur in an open system. There is what's known as intergenerational mobility. And this is the social movement experienced by family members from one generation to the next. Intragenerational mobility is the social movement of individuals within their own lifespan. Now, with the more extreme form of stratification is what we know as slavery. And this is where people are owned by others. Now, this is more likely in a closed system where people are designated as slaves and are treated as property and have little or no control over their lives. Now, there is also two other forms of stratification that we could look at and sociologists do, and one of them is called a caste system and the other is a class system. A caste system is a system of social inequity in which people's status is permanently determined at birth or ascribed based on their parents' ascribed characteristics. A closed system of social stratification exists in places like India. It's based on occupation. In South Africa, based on racial classification. Now, a class system, by contrast, is a type of stratification based on ownership and control of resources and the type of work people do. More open than the caste system because the boundaries between classes are less distinct than the boundaries between castes. Inter and intragenerational mobility are more common in a class system, as are horizontal and vertical mobility. Okay, so horizontal mobility occurs when people experience a gain or a loss in a position or income that does not produce a chance in their place in the class structure. Whereas vertical mobility is moving up or moving down the class structure. So it's probably not the easiest thing to sort of describe, but when we think in terms of inequity in Canada, it doesn't seem to jive. We always think that everyone's doing fine. But by definition, income and wealth are not the same thing. So that helps make a discern difference between where the inequity may lie. Income, that's the economic gain derived from what you make at your job, your wages or your salaries, your income transfers, government aid, or ownership of property. Wealth, on the other hand, this includes property such as buildings, land, farms, houses, factories, cars, as well as other assets such as money in the bank accounts, corporate stocks, bonds, and insurance policies. So income inequality and wealth inequality, let's look at those. Now, both income and wealth inequality are real, consistent, and enduring features of life in Canadian society. It doesn't seem to make sense because we don't always seem to know that or how many. Economists enable us to understand how income and wealth is distributed in society using income and wealth quintiles. Now that's an important feature, quintiles. Each group that's known as a quintile contains 20% of the overall population. So in Canada we have 37 million people, so of the quintiles there are 5 quintiles. In looking at quintiles, there are 5, and each quintile grabs 20% of that 37 million people and puts them into 5 categories of 20% each. And that's what a quintile is. So when we know this, In Canada, 20% of the Canadians of the highest income receive close to 45% of the income of all Canadians. So close to 50% of all income that is possible to earn in Canada is owned by 20% of the population. Now you'll see some graphics that I put behind me here. They're also in your textbook, figure 9.1 and figure 9.2. Now we're going to touch on and look at a couple of the classical perspectives on social class. Now here we're going to consider some of the early theorists we've touched on already, Karl Marx and Max Weber. Marx saw two classes in the modern world. He saw the capitalist class, which he also was known as the bourgeoisie, and it consisted of those who owned the means of production, land and capital. Then you had the working class, the proletariat, those who must sell their labor to the owners in order to earn enough to survive. Now Marx expressed the term alienation. We've touched on this one too. The feeling of powerlessness and estrangement from other people and from oneself. This same sense of being disconnected from others. Now this separation caused what Marx called class conflict, where the struggle between the capitalist class and the working class. Now Weber thought that no one factor, Marx thought that the economic division was the one factor, but Weber didn't think it was just one that defines class. He thought there were many factors such as culture as well as access to important societal resources, such as the economy, social and political power contributed. He developed a multidimensional approach to the study of social stratification. And Weber's multidimensional approach focused on the interplay among wealth, prestige, and power as being necessary in determining a person's position. So for Weber, he said wealth is what links class to life chances, the resources that we can use to make choices. Power is the ability of people and groups to achieve their goals despite any opposition for others. So that's power in this instance. And then prestige, it's the respect with which a person or status position is regarded by others. Now check on page 238, figure 9.4, you'll see an example of how he broke these up. Now from Weber's insight, current sociologists have used the term socioeconomic status, or SES. It's used to refer to the combined measure that attempts to classify individuals, families, or households in terms of factors like income, occupation, and education to determine class position. Now we've really just introduced this topic, but next week we're going to explore contemporary models of social class in Canada. We'll also look at who are the poor of Canada and some theoretical explanations as to why is there this degree of inequity in Canada. All right, so there we go for part one of social stratification in Canada. Next week, our last week, will be part two. Good luck everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.